So, you are going to teach me how to listen? Yes. Bro, I have been doing this all my life. I know how to listen, right? Oh no, listening is different. Why don't you take a listening challenge? I'm sorry, what were you saying? It's okay. Let's dive into the lessons, alright? What? Welcome to Evolve Edutainment. Here, you learn how to learn. Today's topic is different types of listening. There are 5 different types of listening. I'm going to explain this one by one in my video. We all are blessed with 2 ears and 1 mouth. We have 2 ears so that we can listen more. But very often we properly utilize this asset. But listening is more than hearing. Listening requires more than the ears. It requires your mind. It requires your heart. It requires your eyes. Active listening is a combined process of hearing, feeling, imagining, analyzing, comprehending, and concluding. And this all process happens so very fast in our brain. In my last video, I had explained there are tremendous benefits if you are an active listener. I had listed 7 benefits of being an active listener. So if you want to check out that video, I'll leave the link down here in the description. And if you are new here, consider subscribing because a lot of edutainment is going on here. So active listening is a part of active learning. Active learning includes active listening, active reading, note-taking, class participation, and group discussions. So this is the very first part. This is the active listening. And I am preparing a series of videos on active listening right now. And this is the video number 2. And in this video, I'm explaining the 5 types of listening. Let me tell you, everyone, including me, I repeat, everyone, including me, do these types of listening, either all of them or one of them. And how I know that? Because we all are human beings. We all are built the same way. We make mistakes and our brains sometimes tricks on us. So let me dive into the 5 types of listening that we all do, either students, professionals, athletes, or performers. So here's the very first type of listening, which is not so interested type of listening. This happens when you are not really interested in the topic or the discussion which is going on, or the topic that the tutor is teaching. You're not really interested and you are okay about it. You are advertising the fact that I'm not interested and you are paying attention somewhere else but to the person or to the tutor. Number 2 is zoned out listening. Zoned out listening is when your mind wanders everywhere and then comes back. After a few seconds or a few minutes, it comes back and you start to listen again. Your mind probably goes on vacation for a few minutes, you go on a road trip. It also happens that you imagine how you're going to say the word. So during the discussion or the class, you get distracted for a few minutes or a few seconds and you zone out, you start thinking something else and then you come back. But you do not want to be disrespectful for the person. You do not want to show that you got distracted to the other person. You start thinking something else, but you really do not want the other person to notice it. So you start doing a fake listening. Your mind is wandering somewhere, but you try to show that you are in the present moment. You're listening like this. But you're not actually listening. But after a few minutes, when you come back, you start to pay attention again. So this is zoned out listening. Third type of listening is the distracted listening. When you are easily distracted with something, some movement or some sound, you start paying attention to something that no one else is noticing or the tutor is not noticing, but you notice it and you tend to be bothered about that noise or sound. So I'll tell you one example that when I was teaching in a class and one student happened to stand up and raise his hand and said, I cannot hear you. And I was concerned because that was a very quiet class and no one was talking, and I know that I was talking really loud and clear so that my voice was clear to everyone, but why was he saying that he couldn't hear me? So I asked him why you couldn't hear me. He told me that he is trying to pay attention to me, but instead of listening to me, he is hearing a lot of noise from the outside. He could hear the children playing in the playground there. He could hear an announcement that was going on maybe 2-3 miles away on mic, and he could hear that. So his attention was on the children playing or the noise of that mic, that announcement, but he couldn't hear me. He was trying to pay attention to me, but he couldn't listen because he was totally distracted from the noise which was coming from outside. And in his mind, he thought that those noises from outside are distracting him, and so that he was not able to focus. Number 4 is bothered listening. With bothered listening, I mean to say that when you're bothered about something, when you do not agree with what the tutor is saying, or when you are bothered about something in the surroundings, something in your classroom, when you're bothered about something, you lose your ability to comprehend, you lose your ability to totally understand and be in the present moment. Let me give you one example. I had a student like 2 years ago, and he had a great concern that whenever he returned from his physics class, he couldn't remember the lessons. So he was very concerned, and he came to me and he asked me that why it happens that he forgot whatever the tutor told him in the class. He couldn't remember anything in the physics class, which was really important to him. So I told him that of course this is not normal, he should remember something about the class, but he was not able to remember anything. So I asked him to think about the class and tell me anything that he remembers in the class. But he tried, but he couldn't actually tell me anything about the class, that he couldn't remember anything. So I started to tell him, I started to teach him the ways of active listening, that how he can improve his listening skills. I started to give him the exercises and the tips and tricks of being an active listener. All of a sudden, he raised his hand and said, I remember something. So I thought he was going to tell me something from the lesson he learned in the physics class. But he told me that his physics tutor wore a half-sleeve shirt and there's a scar in his hand. When he turns around to write on the screen, on the board, he has a scar on his hand, and he was bothered about that scar, that if that scar is from an accident or if that's a burn, or what was it? So he was worried about that scar. He was concerned about it. He was bothered about that scar. And you have to remember that if you are bothered about something during your class or during a discussion, you lose your ability to listen, to comprehend it. You do not actually pay attention to what the person is saying. Instead, you focus on something you are worried about. Number 5 is the altered type of listening. As I told you in the beginning of this video, that our brain plays tricks on us. Our brains are wired to filter data from the environment. We tend to listen what we want to listen. We tend to see what we want to see. So this happens in the listening as well. So sometimes it happens that your tutor is saying something else, but our brain alters that information and it appears to be whatever you understand already. You think that whatever the tutor is saying is the same idea or is the same thing. Whenever you think that the teacher is trying to explain something to you and you think, yeah, I already know this, there's a good chance that the teacher is trying to explain something else and you're not paying attention, or probably you are misunderstanding something. Let me give you a very good example of altered listening. About 2 to 3 years ago, I was attending a workshop on safe driving. In that workshop, the instructor was clearly telling about the friction of tires, how friction plays an important role on stopping, and safety features like you have to put on your seat belts, how airbag works. I remember the instructor clearly mentioned that not putting your seatbelt is an offense. But there is no law on how much grip your tire should have, because if there is no grip in your tire, there is a good chance that you may get into an accident. So when this workshop was over and we were doing question and answers, he asked a lady in the workshop that what did she understand. The lady said, "You should always put on the seatbelt to avoid accident." She chose to listen what she already knew. So her brain put filter on the keywords car, safety, and seatbelt, and then the brain allowed her not to listen any of the other information, because that's all she wanted to know about the safety, because that's all she wanted to know, that you have to put seatbelts while driving. So those were the 5 types of listening we all do. We all do these mistakes because we are human beings. We do mistakes. So if you do any of these mistakes or all of these mistakes, it's completely alright, because our brain plays tricks on us. All you have to do is to learn how to listen. I'm going to explain you the tips and the tricks and the techniques of being a good listener going forward in the series of this video. So stay tuned. The best advice that I can give you today is that you have to identify that which of these mistakes you often do. Which of these mistakes bothers you most while you are discussing with someone, when you're talking with someone, when you are in the class. Which of these mistakes that you often do. And once you have it identified for you, you can work on it. So going forward, I'm going to make videos on the tips and techniques and the tricks on being a good listener. So friends, give it a thumbs up, and if you are new here, consider subscribing, because I am committed to teach you how to learn. I hope you have a great day and keep learning.